Hello out there. I'm Chris Bisha of 360degreesound.com. It's my pleasure to welcome in Mr. Nick Heyward, singer, songwriter, and frontperson of 80s pop sensations Haircut 100. Nick was the primary songwriter and vocalist on Haircut's great classic album, Pelican West, which featured hits like Love Plus One, their big hit in the States, and Favorite Shirts, Boy Meets Girl. Nick followed that with his first solo album, North of a Miracle, which featured the single Whistle Down the Wind. It charted in the States and reached number 13 on the UK singles charts. He's continued to record and release excellent albums, enjoying consistent chart success in the UK. This summer, he'll be fronting Haircut 100 on their first tour of North America in 40 years, on a bill with Howard Jones and ABC. Thanks for joining me, Nick.
Oh, thank you, Chris. That was lovely.
Yeah. Well, I will just say that I wish I'd kept track of my son's haircuts so we could celebrate the 100th. Maybe like age 11 or 12, I figure if one gets a haircut like every 6 weeks, you get like 8 or 9 per annum, carry the 1, divide by, whatever.
Yeah.
Is there a story behind?
I missed it, I must say. I missed the 100. It passes you by. It's a bit like when you're learning to ride a bike and you take the stabilizers off, or you learn to type. When you first got computers and we all learned to type again, because I didn't know how to type, kind of thing. And you're poking at it, aren't you, with your fingers and stuff. And that moment when you forget what you're doing and you're just doing it, I love that. I love that moment. That's a kind of really creative moment, because you're going from conscious to unconscious and back again. I love it.
Yeah. And you're sort of in the flow, connected to that, to the right brain consciousness. It really is wonderful. I totally agree. So is there a story behind the name Haircut 100?
Well, it came out of that flow state because it was stream of consciousness. Les Graham and I were sitting around a coffee table in the Ski Club of Great Britain, which was where my parents ran a bar, and there were stewards, and we had a flat downstairs, and we used to sit there, come up with a name, and take it off to the pub in Beckenham and try it out on our mates, see how it would go down. And I said, Haircut 100, and Les said, what did you say? And we took it to the pub and tried it out, and the reaction was, why? And so that question was good. It just stuck. It was the only name that stuck with us, and it was just like, it was right. It just felt right, So that why, and why call it Lemon Fire Brigade? Why that? Why did you call it Calling Captain Autumn, that song? And why Pelican West?
Yeah.
So, it's
That's
good.
Great. Scratching people's brains, finding a little spot that hasn't been used in a while.
Yeah, I mean, just it's that. I remember seeing a picture of Paul McCartney holding up a question mark, and I loved that image of him in a black polo neck, looking beatnik, and holding up a huge question mark on a white piece of board. It was just like, what is it? What's that? And anything that goes into the surreal, I've just been drawn to that. When I was younger, my brother had, he had interesting artworks in his room, Roger Dean sleeves and things, and lots of fancy stuff. And it was just kind of, So just being drawn to the unusual, really, for that. And that anything that you start to say why, and then that's it. And why?
Yeah, recently I watched a documentary about Hypnosis, the graphic artist who created so many great album covers in the 70s, like Pink Floyd and stuff like that. And it was always something weird. Like, I remember Yes had an album called Tornado, and they had like a map of Dartmoor with all the different tours. And I would just stare at these things for hours, like, what in the world is this? And I think that really kind of got me going, creatively as a human being at that time. So I completely track with what you're saying.
Yeah, well, I grew through prog rock as well. I was listening to early Genesis and things like Entangled and Ripples and Trick of the Tail and all these songs that were just so. I know what I like in your wardrobe and things, and
Mhm.
the lyrics that were flying out, and Ride a White Swan by Mark Bolan. And, I just you took it for granted that this was a song called Ride a White Swan, but you never knew why. So, but you just loved it. You loved how it worked and those words. Why did they choose that? So, when we were just starting and being creative, it wasn't about conforming. I mean, there were people around that were brilliant, obviously everywhere, but it wasn't about how to copy them. It was more like how to, you were inspired by them. You couldn't do another song called Ride a Black Swan or Ride a Blue Swan or something. So, but you were just inspired by the fact that they'd written something like that in the first place. And you'd also heard Steely Dan, and you didn't understand why they were making the music they were making. Why write a song called Peg? What's that? Why would you do that? And all this brilliant wizardry that was going on musically, and then a simple song about a peg. And so there was great stuff going on there. Music was so inspired then, and Elton John singing about rockets, and all the lyrics from Bernie Taupin in those days was so proper lyricist stuff. I mean, that's what we learnt on, proper lyricists that just crafted. I mean, that was what his job was, a lyricist. He met Elton John because, writer wants, melody man needs lyricists. So, he would write lyrics and then send them to Elton. I just love that, so being inspired by the creative side, really.
And Haircut 100 were very inspirational for me. I was a band kid, played saxophone, and I dug the horns and the stellar musicianship. So thanks a lot for sharing a little bit of what was inspiring you at that
Mm.
time. So
Oh,
yeah,
thank you, Chris.
yeah.
It's a musical thing, it's inspiration, isn't it? That's what's so lovely about it. I mean, you just pass it on, and I'm constantly amazed when all of us are when we get complimented on the fact that we've inspired people. It's just you just think, wow, I know what that feels like because I've been inspired. So it's really heartwarming to get that, to know that you've done that. When we saw that Pelican West was in the top 100 albums in America, we just thought, what? What? What is it? And it was because we were just doing what we loved doing at that time, where everybody in a band plays their part, you know. I was there thinking up words, things that were just why. And there was Les was he just come up with these bass lines out of nowhere, and I just like watched them, and he didn't know why he was coming up with them either. This is the whole thing. You've got all your influences, everything that's gone before, and that's what you bring to the rehearsal studio, or in our case, it was a linen cupboard because that's all we could afford. So we just rehearsed anywhere we could for years and years. We thought we were going to be a ska band, punk band first, and then a new wave band, and then ska, and then mod, and then so many things that we just thought we were going to be. But we were just evolving, I suppose, and learning how to play our instruments. And then suddenly, once Blair joined, it was just we thought we could possibly be the band that we could, because he was American, he was from Memphis, and he really could play the drums. I mean, I think he was the best drummer, and we thought he was the best drummer in the universe. But at the time, he was definitely the best drummer in the UK. And there was no one to touch him. He was just like out of this world. And we saw him and said, "Please, can would you join our band?" He just went, "Yeah." That was it. He was in. You know.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Haircut haven't toured. You mentioned getting on the charts in America, and having this drummer from Memphis. So you haven't toured the States or North America in 40 years. How come, and why now?
Well, we did a 40th anniversary, and we've got back together in the last 40 years, but we haven't been able to remain together because we've never had a manager. That was why it ended in the first place, because we didn't have any rudder. We didn't have any sails. I mean, that was just, like we were just imagine a football team without a manager. It's not going very far. So, but this time we got together to do the 40th anniversary. And then I booked a gig. I'd had a gig booked. And so it was at the Shepherd's Bush Empire. And so we were there. And then BBC piano room, said, "Would you like to come in and do a session?" So it's like, okay, so we're gradually, okay, coming together, evolving again. Everybody who was in it that wanted to be in it was in it, and everybody who didn't wasn't. So the people there were doing it, and then a management company out of the blue, said, "Do you want some help?" We were like, "Wow, this is amazing!" Because yes, absolutely. So, and they specialize in bands, like they manage the Manic Street Preachers and Wet Leg, um, Delamitri, so they know what they're doing with bands, and so Melvin and Martin, and so they've taken over with that. So that's why we're doing a tour now, because we're staying together, and it's great, and it's rekindled, especially Les and Graham and I's relationship, because we were the guys right from the beginning, sitting around the coffee table, who started this dream, in the ski club of Great Britain, and in many rehearsal rooms up and down the Beckenham High Street. Yeah, we've just been carrying the dream of one day, shaking imaginary audiences' hands in the rehearsal rooms and dreaming that it would be, and living together in one flat like the Monkeys, and going out and dressing as a band and being a band and going to see other bands, all dressing and going to see whoever was happening at that time. And it was just so inspired. And then going back and talking for hours in the kitchen about what we're going to do, and then getting to play places, we getting proper gigs, and it was amazing. And then it happened. So, and that's why we're here. So when we go on stage now, we're back in that coffee table. This is our dream, and we're still doing it at this age, and it's quite astounding, quite something, and really, really delightful.
Yeah.
Overwhelming as well, it's a bit like you laugh, you look around, I turn around to Les on the stage now, and Graham looks around. It's just like we know each other so well, yeah, I
People are
suppose
still,
I would get that, I
yeah,
suppose.
and people are still digging your stuff all these years later. So will you be doing primarily Pelican West material?
Yeah, that's all we have.
Yeah.
But we've got a new single, so The Unloving Plum. Uh, so we'll be doing that. That's been great. It's been recorded as Pelican West was, with Les Graham and I, and Blair in the drum booth, and Les Graham and I sitting in the control room, funking, playing together, getting that live element and that sort of performance in the room, and recording it, and then coloring in adding some brass and some percussion, and then you have Haircut 100. And so this new song is that, and it sounds fresh as a daisy. It really does. It's just like it's a winning ingredient that we have. And it's funny because we were being recorded by Sean Reed, lovely man who's in Dexys Midnight Runners, and
Hmm.
he's got a studio in his house in Hackney, and that's where we're recording it. And he said we were playing it, and we were recording others, because we only wanted to do 3, and we ended up doing 10, because that's pretty much what Haircut's like. It's like, got any more, Nick? I was like, oh, I've got this idea here. And
Mhm.
before you know it, it's like another one. And he said, "Oh, I get it. Yeah, I'm in the room with Haircut 100 now. I can feel it. I can see it, and I see what it is now." Because we don't know what it is, but it's just years of being together, and this magic that we have when we're in the studio, and it just starts to happen, and it's lovely, and that's why now it's still continuing, and it's so amazing that it's happening, and then so I don't want to do anything else, and nor does Graham or Les, and Blair's joining us as much as he can. I mean, he's in on the recordings and things like that, but he's not able to make the American tour, sadly, because he's got stuff to do and stuff. So, and there's some health issues and things, but he'll be there recording and things. So, but it's that thing of the nucleus of the friendship as well. It's just so good. It really is a good thing to have. And as older guys, we've just sorted out all our stuff. So
Mhm.
it's just there's nothing there except love and where's your socks? You know, oh, where do you put your socks? Or, you
Uh,
know,
oh, that's
why do you put
great.
your socks in the fridge?
Yeah. Never forget them there. Yeah, that's great to hear, man. That's really heartwarming to hear that you guys are chumming it up again and really
Mm,
digging it and enjoying what you're
yeah.
doing. You mentioned
Genuine enjoyment, Chris. It's genuine enjoyment. Yeah.
yeah, I can see it. I can see it in your
Mm,
face and hear it in your
yeah.
voice. When you mentioned the brass section, I was actually talking to Howard Jones earlier in the week, and he indicated that you're bringing a brass section with you on the North American tour. Um, what can we expect from Haircut this time around as your triumphant return to our continent, if you will?
Mm. Well, this is dipping our toes in because we're kind of as a guest, we're on first and we've got a half an hour. So we're just going to kind of say hello, whiz through the hits and probably play the new song, The Unloving Plum. So it'll be The Unloving Plum, Favorite Shirts, Love Plus One, Fantastic Day, Nobody's Fall, King Size probably off the album, and then Toodaloo. Glad you enjoyed it, but we'll be going. We have no choice but to go like the Clappers when we get on stage. That's the thing. It's the music takes you over, so there's no kind of laid back in Haircut 100. It's just pure excitement all the way.
Yeah, I didn't hear you mentioned favorite shirts though. Are you gonna do favorite shirts?
Oh yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
good.
See, that goes so quickly. I probably mentioned it, and it just you probably didn't hear it. It just
Yeah,
goes so fast. I think
no,
it's
it's just
less than 3 seconds long, that song.
yeah. Yeah, it's one of my all-time favorite jams. I've picked up the saxophone again after many years, and that was the first tune that I put on for inspiration. Um,
Really?
yeah, and I've tried
Wow.
to play along with the lads. So yeah,
Yeah.
I
It's
love that
tight, the
tune.
brass, isn't it? It's really
Yeah,
tight. Yeah.
super tight, man. What a great tune. Um, I'd like to talk a little bit more now about your solo stuff.
Hmm.
Um, so you followed your run with Haircut with 1983's North of a Miracle.
Hmm.
As we mentioned, it has features Whistle Down the Wind. And it's really sophisticated pop, and I love the instrumentation. And I'm so glad to hear you guys are bringing horns on the tour. You've got horns, piano, great backing vocals. It has this timeless feel. If you'd have told me that North of a Miracle came out this summer, I'd have totally bought that. Um, and
Wow.
it reminds me a bit of Noel Gallagher's last record, Council Skies, from 2023, which is a great record. So when
Hmm.
that was a success, how is it different for you as a solo artist?
Um, well, I mean, that was the dream continued really, because I really wanted us to work with Jeff Emerick. So I suppose North America was working with Jeff Emerick and sort of saying this is what I wanted our second album to be like. Because it's still got brass on it and stuff, but it's just a bit, it just had something. I mean, Jeff is an amazing. I mean, I'd listened to Imperial Bedroom by Elvis Costello, and it was so inspiring me around that time. Of course, Penny Lane and everything. Had uh, Bob, Bob Sargent, sorry, bless his heart, for Pelican West producer. But Jeff had kind of done, just done so much, and he was such a wizard genius. And so it was an amazing experience to actually get to work with him in the first place. I couldn't believe it was happening. But then to do an album with him, I thought it was astonishing, and especially doing it in Air Studios. But that was the dream that I wanted for us, for the band. It wasn't to be, but getting to be in Air and sound that expansive was so thrilling. I must say, I wasn't in a good place mentally at that time, but I still don't think that's such a bad thing for making music anyway. Um, and it was so good to work with. I mean, everything that you recorded sounded astonishing. I'd go in and the next day, and Jeff would have recorded something. He got in somebody who played on. He said, "Oh, he played on For No One," and we've got Dave coming in now, and he was, I played on with him with the last Attractions record, and and then Steve Naive came in and played some Hammond because he knew Steve. And it was just like one after the other. And I think even one day Ringo walked in, and I was like, okay, that's I think they're right. This is too much here. So it was just it was like being surrounded by things like that. I mean, one day when we recorded Whistle Down the Wind, it was among Paul McCartney's equipment. So there was the bass that he did on Good Night Tonight, which I remembered, his wing stuff. So I was going around spotting all the instruments that I could recognize, which was an inspiration in itself, and then you'd have the mic set up and you've got to sing around this stuff. So you're around, all this pop memorabilia and this history and in the places and in the rooms where, because, I'd known that this was where the Pretenders did all their classics, so I just couldn't believe it was happening. I thought, hold on a minute, we're just Scrags from Beckenham, 3 years ago, we were in the pub saying, is this name going to work? But here it was. So it was good. It was amazing. Oh, it would have been amazing to do it with the band, but it wasn't to be. But listening back, I must say that album sounds huge. Still, it sounds timeless, and I think that's Bob's. I keep saying Bob. Sorry about that, Chris. I think that's Jeff's talent, that he made everything timeless. He had just a timeless way. I mean, I can still listen to everything that he's done and recorded now. If you go through all the stuff that he's recorded, even Gallagher and Lars Heart on My Sleeve, you hear that now and it sounds beautifully recorded. It's like when you hear the Eagles and you hear that, the recordings of this music, it's just, wow, these were masters at the time. They knew what they were doing. And even when we're working with Bob Sargent doing Pelican West, this was where Bohemian Rhapsody was recorded. So and in the next door was where Uriah Heep were doing their new album, and Motorhead had done Ace of Spades. And the guy that works on on Love Plus One, he worked with AC/DC. So he was a rock guy. So, that's why the snare is so huge on Love Plus One, because the guy put it through a piano. He made it sound bigger than what it's supposed to be, because he knew what to do, because he worked with AC/DC. And all these amazing details that I look back on now, and I just in awe of them, because they're of course what make you. That's the evolution of music, and hopefully long may it continue. Not just all music should be made on a laptop. Because I can't imagine Bohemian Rhapsody being made on a laptop. It wouldn't be Bohemian Rhapsody. There has to be that element of magic. And bands, because bands have to stay. You have to have bands. They're really important. I know that they're dying at the moment. Generally, there's not so many bands, especially in the UK. I don't know how it is in America, but most of the bands seem to be on NPR or Tiny Desk or other places, but they're not so much in the charts. But bands are doesn't matter what kind of music it is, but if it's a band and a group of people coming together to make some new sound, it's always going to be unique. It's always going to be different, because you get loads of people together, and it's like, can't imagine. Well, all the best comedies with lots of people, isn't it?
Yeah, Monty Python and the like. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't want to miss the opportunity to talk a little bit about The Mermaid and the Lighthouse Keeper, a record that you
You
released
know that?
in 2022. Well,
Wow.
I'll tell you, I had to pull over. I was driving the first time that I listened to it, but I just couldn't drive safely through the tears. It was just so emotional for me listening to that. And it was so much of an evolution from the earlier stuff that you've done. It made me think of my daughter and I when she was small. And there's a dynamic tension in that song cycle. You seem to be processing some big emotions, but it's also got this sunny summer field feeling. I'm fascinated by the recording. What can you tell me about making that album?
Well, it was with another thing, that's bands, because that was India Dupre and I. And so I wouldn't have made that on my own, and India wouldn't. But coming together, you know, Venus and Mars, as we wanted to call it. Well, we knew ourselves as that uh, because of our stars that we did our charts, star charts, and we noticed that our Venus was in opposites. You know, my Venus was in her Mars, and her Mars was in my Venus, so to speak. So,
Interesting.
yeah, and then that album was made above a brothel in Soho, and so every time we'd walk into the studio, it'd be like, you know, we're walking into a brothel, and because it had models, and so it was so obvious what it was. It wasn't like, yeah, it was a seedy part of Soho, and one time I came out of there, and a bunch of guys were going, it's him from, it's you, innit? Well, how the mighty fool, eh? Look at that. You're going, how long you been visiting brothels, you know? I'd go, no, we're making an album up at the top. Yeah. Um, and but actually India and I got to know some of the girls, and they were really nice. So anyway, I digress. The album was
Sarah is in the other room. Don't forget.
thankfully Sarah knows all about this. And knows India, and we'll be meeting up with India because when we come to LA, so we're still really good friends. And so that album was just very much us processing that period as well. It had nothing to do with what was going on in pop music at that time. It was just, I mean, it has an influence of that period, but really it was just, okay, we're going to get together and make music. And our friends Lisa and Steve had a studio, and that's what it was. It was like a room, and Mark Arman used to use it as well, and some others, and so it was with this lovely guy called Richard Bignell, and it was Richard, India, and I in this room above a brothel with a beautiful view over the back of St. Martin's College, so which was at the back, and which is now Foyle's bookshop. And now I sit in Foyle's bookshop and look out the window and think, oh, that's where we did Mermaid and the Lighthouse Keeper. And we just got creative and ate ramen in Old Compton Street, and it was mostly raining, even though it was summer, because that was London at that particular year. And it was lovely. And I remember India kept going back to Los Angeles because she didn't like the cold. So I was always trying to get hold of her to be in the studio. Um, she doesn't like she loves the sun. She's come from Essex and then Australia and then LA. And she loves LA and and lives there, stays there and everything. So she loves the sun. So I think that's why it's got such a sunshiny feel as well. But it definitely was more, I think it being Venus as well, it definitely had a female, definitely the female influence on it. So it was more open-hearted than what I'd done before. I mean, what I'd done before when it was on my own was probably more melancholy, but this was just more open, I think. And we were just definitely reflecting each other and reflecting back things and finishing off songs, and it was great. We worked really well together. We're wanting to do another record. It's just actually logistically doing it, but we can because, you know, of the advent of computers and things. So actually you can make albums on computers. I'm not down on making music online and things, but it's just, if we were in a room together, there would be that added extra magic that you get. And then if we were in a studio together, you get that added performance thing that you get. I mean, we used to do Virtue at Largo in LA, and the original Largo, and it was just, we got lost like dolphins swimming, and swimming when we sang it. It was just, and India she was always looked like she was overcome by something from somewhere else when she was performing. I'd like turn around to, I don't know, to try and relax, but she'd be lost in the music. And so I ended up just joining her, and it was like, that's what we'd do. We'd end up just getting taken over, and you could hear a pin drop in it, in the place where normally people are eating and clanging glasses and things. And so there was many performances in Largo like that, which were really special. I think It may have some somewhere, but they're really
Yeah.
good.
It's gorgeous, and it's definitely a collaboration. You can
Mm,
tell. Uh,
yeah.
yeah, very excellent work. So I hope you do get a chance to record with her again. Um,
Well,
but I've
I'm a team player. I like being in teams. I come alive with other people. Left to my own devices, I'm probably quite lazy, like a bull grazing in a field in a blazer.
yeah. Well, I can see the tape's about to run out here, so I want to remind everyone to look for Nick Heyward and Haircut 100 on their first North American tour in forever with
Yeah.
Howard Jones and ABC starting on August 14th in Redmond, Washington. And give Nick's North of a Miracle a spin, as well as The Mermaid and Lighthouse Keeper and all his great solo releases. Where can people find you on social media, Nick?
nickhayward.com and Instagram I really like. I post on Instagram. Facebook's more like a bit of a playground, but you can find me there. Don't go on Twitter now because it's turned into a bit of a strange place, but I do have a place there too. So yeah, just the usual places really. I mean, I'm on social media, like all of us.
Right. Like it or not, sometimes. Um, well, the music you made with Haircut was so important to so many of us at such a key time in our lives. Uh, what can you say to people like me, who might not be aware of the great stuff that you've been doing since then?
Mm. Um, well, that's what I love about, excuse me, that's what I love about social media right now is the fact that you can listen to all this stuff. So you can check out this other stuff that I've done. Like I'm checking out every 10cc album or all these albums that I could never buy before. Now I can just listen to them and it's just brilliant. Like going, oh, now I can hear to every Steely Dan album, not just the ones I can afford. And you're hearing all this brilliant stuff. So all the best music's been made. I mean, I'm not saying that it's not going to be more in the future, but there's amazing music that's been made. I mean, even when I look back on some of the stuff, I'm amazed at making that because it's just you forget about what you've done, don't you? Like when you look back on an old photograph and you go, "Wow, I was so down on myself in that holiday in Greece, but I look all right there." So, when you do that, or you can. It's just things from the past look better, and you've got rid of all of the things that were surrounding them, so they just look really nice and fresh and like a fresh tomato, or like a really fresh banana in a fruit bowl.
That's great. I really appreciate this, Nick. Thank you so much. So I'm Chris Bisha at 360 Degree Sound, and thanks to everyone out there for listening to music from all angles.
Oh, thank you, Chris. That was lovely.